Hi. How are y'all? I'm really glad to see you. I've got so many phone calls in the last 2 days. I really thought that I would be the only one here when I got here today. It's been crazy. There's all these stomach viruses. Everybody getting some of that? That's good. That's a good weight loss program, by the way. It works. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and I want to say I'm really glad you're here today. I really needed to see you today. I have to start by saying it's your first time today, it gets better. Okay? And, it's just this week has been extremely hard. Monday, my dad had open heart surgery, and so he's been in the hospital all week. So I've been up there most of the week, and then last night Celia's cousin was killed, and that's where she's at today. And so I want you guys to remember Joey and Amanda Durgan and Celia and just their whole family. It was just a freak accident, and you know, who knows? I wouldn't even begin to offer any kind of explanation. It just, it's just one of those things that happens. But anyway, so I haven't been to sleep really yet. So it's been a long week and a long 24 hours, and there's nothing I could talk to you about more right now than running on empty. I'm completely out, and I try really hard to encourage you when you come to church. So I hate to be a bummer to you today. It's normally not like this, so just bear with me. I want to talk to you today. I asked God last night, I'm like, how do you do what needs to be done today with everything else that's going on? And I think what he told me was, shut up whining, quit your crying, and trust me, and you just do what I tell you to do. So here I am, and I don't want to be here. I know you don't go to church often, and the pastor gets up, and he's the one that don't want to be there. But today I don't want to be here. I would like to be in a lot of different places. But I also know that God wanted me here to tell you something. So it's really probably no accident that you're here and that I'm where I'm at. Life's tough. It's just tough. And I think one of the themes of this series has been, life's short, don't waste it. I think if you could put it all in a sentence, you just don't know what you've got. Don't waste it. I believe, and other people may not, but I believe that our days are numbered. I think from before we were born, I believe we have a certain amount of time here on this earth to live in this body and enjoy the things that God has given us. And you don't know how much time that is. And I really believe that all of the teachings of Jesus point to the place of go after life for all that it's worth and don't waste a minute of it. Don't waste a minute of it. And then he goes through this extensive detail on telling us how to do that, how to get the most out of this life, and how to truly live. And I think we waste so much time doing things and worrying about things and stressing over things that really don't matter. I think when tragedy strikes, we all get a reality check. A lot of you guys have had losses. I asked Celia last night, I said, is this what it's like getting old? Does everybody around you just start dying? And I don't mean that. I was like serious though, because when you're young, you don't really think about that. But it seems like the older you get, all your friends and your family and your parents and you start losing so many people that you care so much about. But I think as we face those kind of tragedies, it makes you really check up and say, wow, am I wasting it? And you look and you say, what's really important? What really matters? And I think when we get serious with that question, what really matters, we start to weed out some of the things that don't matter. But we find ourselves right back in the same boat again, correct? We find ourselves in a boat on a lake and a storm rolling up. And then we start panicking. And it's funny, not funny, just the way God works. But this morning when I got up, the first thing I read, I really just opened my Bible because this is weird, but I believe Jesus is the breath of life and I needed some. So I couldn't breathe, so I just opened my Bible to breathe. Now, if you're not there, that's cool, but man, if you need a breath, there's some breath in there. And when I opened it, man, it was just on this page, and it said, it was in Matthew, and it was chapter 9, verse 20, or chapter 8, verse 23. And this is a really cool story because Jesus had been doing all these miracles, and he had really been working. Now, ministry is work, especially when it's thousands and thousands of people, and they all want something from you. And so he's been healing the sick and raising the dead and feeding the thousands and feeding the other thousands and trying to raise this group of misfits. We think of the disciples as like 80-year-old men who are wise with long white beards and they're just got a grasp on reality. But you have to remember that these guys were teenagers. The youngest disciple was about 13 and the oldest one maybe 21. So as Jesus is walking with these guys, have you ever hung around 12, 13 to 20-year-olds? All the time? You need a break, right? Not just the ministry that's work, but 12, 13-year-olds? Oh my gosh. Only the Son of God could do that. Right? It gives us a little scope. If you've got teenage kids, you got scope, you got perspective. You're starting to understand now when Jesus gets short and snippy with Peter, you understand why. If you spent the weekend with your 17-year-old, you know why. Right? You know why he gets short. You know why he gets snippy. You know why he says, "How long must I be with you?" How many times do I have to tell you? How many times? So this is life with Jesus and his apostles, his disciples, his followers. Now, these guys had given up. How many 13-year-olds give up their life to follow who they believe is the one person that gives life? Very few. So you can't knock them. They're doing great. But you also understand the frustration being the guide in this group. And so they've been through all this and Jesus is tired. And a lot of times you'll see this happen. Jesus says, "I'm going to pray." And you guys get in a boat and go somewhere. You ever feel that way? Just get in the car and go somewhere else. I'm going to pray for a while before I kill somebody. Maybe that's what he was thinking. Maybe that's what he was praying about. God, give me strength right now before I call down fire. I know as a parent, man, sometimes you just got to pray for yourself. So this is what's going on, and it's been rough, and so Jesus is extremely tired, and so he gets in this, and this story starts, he gets in the boat with them, and they're going across the lake. In verse 23, he says, "And when he got in the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea. Now, I haven't been on the actual place where he's at, but I understand that storms come up fast and furious, like they're big and they're bad. And so the context is they're in a small boat, like, a bass tracker or something. They're like, with trolling motor power. They're not going very far, very fast. And then this huge storm comes up. Now, I've been on some lakes. When I was a kid, I was probably 7 or 8, and I remember it vividly because it was so traumatic. But my grandfather's from a different generation, and he's a power fisherman. And so he has a boat that's about, one of those green boats that are like this wide and kind of long, And we're in one of those, but my grandfather is not good with a small motor because like when the fish are somewhere else, you need to get there. So we're standing up, and this boat is standing up, like going across Lake Palestine. Have you ever been on Lake Palestine in a storm? That is one rough body of water. So we're going across Lake Palestine, and I am terrified. I'm holding on with my legs, my arms, everything I can grab hold to, and we got like this 180 horsepower motor on this reed that we're going through the water in, hammered down because my grandfather only knows one speed. It's stop or the floor. It's the way he drives his car. It's the way he drives his boat. It's the way he is. He's all out or he's in stop. And so we were all out. And the waves were so big that when we would hit them, we would go through the waves. Like we're cutting through waves on the lake. And he may have been confident, but I knew we were dying. And if you've ever been in one of those boats in any rough water, it hurts. Like it's painful. Like you're just going, "Gah," and you're hitting your ribs, and my grandfather, he's got to have 75 poles or he can't fish. So there's hooks flying everywhere, and you're dodging hooks and hitting your ribs, and it was terrifying being out on Lake Palestine in that storm. And I got a feeling in that small boat that's what Jesus' disciples were. And here's the thing, like they didn't have life jackets. Now I had 3 or 4 on. But they didn't have life jackets either. And I'm taking it that these guys weren't the best swimmers in the world. It wasn't like, oh, let's go to the water park and swim. They were probably, like the only time they were in the water, they were probably working. So these guys were absolutely terrified. They're in the middle of a lake. The storm is raging. I imagine thunder and lightning and waves and wind, and it's scary. And if you've ever been in the water where you can't see land and you're in something like that, man, you just think it's over. And drowning's probably not, like you're not going, wow, man, drowning's not really that big a deal, but like that's not the way I want to go. I don't want to drown. That don't seem good. So they're terrified. But get this, as they're going across, the waves are crashing in, and the next piece of this verse is, but Jesus was asleep. We're dying, and Jesus is sleeping. Now again, man, he's just spent a lot of time with these guys. He's tired. And sometimes you can sleep through a lot, right, whenever it comes down to that kind of lifestyle. But he's asleep. And I always thought, why is Jesus able to sleep in this? This guy has peace on a different level than, he don't worry about stuff like I worry about stuff. Or maybe he's just a good swimmer. Who knows? Who knows? But in any case, this boat is in trouble. It's taking on water. And Jesus is sleeping. And so I imagine the conversation went like this. It's in the Bible, but like, John says, Peter, you wake him up. And Peter's the oldest, and he's like, I'm in charge of this vessel. You wake him up. Because John's like the youngest, right? And so they have this scuffle, and Peter and John are always at each other. And then so like, they're like, Thomas, you ain't doing nothing. You go wake him up. We're trying to save the, and so you imagine there's this discussion on who gets to wake up God. You know what I mean? It's like, if he's sleeping, should we really wake him? Because what if he gets angry? Because he probably did, get angry with him. And he was probably like, when he left, you ever get in the car? We're leaving, and I don't want anybody to wake me up until we're there. Like, for nothing. I mean, he probably I don't care if the wind's blowing, the waves are crashing, hail, thunder, lightning, storm, do not wake me up. That's the way I get with my kids. I don't care if the house is on fire, do not wake me up. And that's probably what he was telling them. And so they were like, we're scared, man. We're going to have to wake him up. So they go and they wake Jesus up. And when they woke him saying, save us, Lord, we're perishing. They're desperate, man. They're dying. That was a reality for them. Now, it's easy to read this in hindsight or look at it from a different scope, but their reality was they were going down. They were dying. And there was only one place they could go, one person who they thought could save their lives. And he said to them, why are you afraid? All right. Captain Obvious. It's like, look around. That's why. Why are you afraid? And he says, oh, you of little faith. When I read that, I thought, man, Jesus is scolding them. I told you not to wake me up for anything. And he's scolding them. But over the years, I've come to see that he might not have really been scolding them. It may have been just more of a, how when you want your kids to succeed and pass tests so bad and they fail, and it kind of like, man, this was a great opportunity for you to rise up and you just fell short. And I get it now that he was maybe rooting for them. And it wasn't that he was scolding them, but that he was like, man, not this time. You're not ready yet. It's kind of like that, I thought maybe you were getting ready, but you're just not ready to be on your own yet. You got older kids, it's like, why do you do that? I don't think you're ready to be on your own. And then you're like, you know what? The alternative is you could stay here, so you're probably ready. It's probably good. You can go ahead and go. If anything's going to happen, it'll happen out there. You'll be fine. But I think as Jesus told them, he says, why are you afraid? You have little faith. And he rose and he rebuked the winds and the sea. And then everything was calm instantly. And the men marveled. I mean, can you imagine? And they said, what sort of man is this that even the winds and the sea obey him? And I think there was a huge dose of reality that God just got very real. I think they saw something in their fear, in their terror, in their time of completely empty faith. I mean, you have to admit, that's going to drain the old faith bucket down to zero. At the time of exact emptiness in faith, God became very, very real to them. Who Jesus was became extremely real to them. And here's what I've learned is that you can't just say, I need more faith and get it. You cannot will yourself to have faith. And that's extremely odd to me, because I grew up in traditions that said, if you don't have faith, you just need to get some. I don't know if anybody else grew up in those traditions, but like, you just don't have enough faith, like, you're bad. Like, if you're a doubter, you're bad. You're weak. You're just not a very good follower of Jesus. I mean, I grew up in traditions where they might even go so far as to say, you're not even a follower of Jesus at all. But here's what I was taught by a very wise man. Howard Burley taught me this. He would get a kick if I called him a wise man. We don't have faith, and we don't have the ability to get it. All the faith that we possess is imparted to us. God is faith. He is faith. And where His presence is, and where He has made Himself known in us, is faith. And faith is not something you can generate. Faith is received. It's offered by God, and it's received by us. And so you can't just say, man, I'm going to have more faith. Now, here's what happens to a lot of Christians is they get more imagination. And so they start to think of themselves as being more faithful, and they make up fairy tales and things in their heads to convince themselves that they have more faith. The faith is received. And what happens to those people, you know who they are. You know, the ultra-religious, I'm going to grab some snakes and drink poison people. You know what I mean? I've always heard that we did that here. And I'm like, anybody, listen to me right now. If you have ever heard that they handle snakes at Driven Life, that person has never met me and never walked into this building. Because I don't allow snakes on the property. If I thought there was a snake on the property, I wouldn't be on the property. Snakes are evil. They're the devil. They're the great serpent of old. And they shouldn't be handled, touched, or even in the vicinity where humans are. The only good snake is one that's extremely dead. And I mean, you can't even be too sure. Me and Chance were having this conversation the other day. Like, when you see a snake on the road, you don't just hit it once. I live on a country road, and you back up, and you hit it again, and you hit it, and you hit that snake till it stops moving. That's how you handle snakes. And then one day I panicked because I hit one, and I knew I hit it, and I looked back, and it was gone. And I'm checking the floorboard, because I'm like, this snake's got in the car somehow. Like, I'm freaking out bad. So, having more faith doesn't mean you do stupid things. Okay? I'm sorry, but if that's a religious thing, and that's just, I don't know, they may call that brave, they may call it insanity. I don't know what those things are, but it's definitely not faith. Faith is an absolute assurance, an absolute knowing inside that what God has shown you is true and real. And when you receive that faith, there is nothing on this earth that can change that. There are things in this world that I don't understand, like why young people die. Why people who have had such a rough time in their life gets changed, why they die. Why bad things happen to good people. Bad things should happen to bad people, right? Things happen to people. And when we run empty on faith, I think it has to do with losing sight. And I think the story gives us a little bit of insight. What happened was these guys knew Jesus. They knew him. And I don't mean they knew about him or they thought. Like many times prior to this, they knew who he was. But you know what one of the biggest obstacles to faith is? It's emotions. These guys got emotional. They went from something they absolutely knew to be true to a place that was extremely flesh-driven, like emotional, feel, touch, sense. Things that could be seen trumped things that couldn't be seen. And they started to doubt and say, you know what? We're going to die out here. No, that wasn't the plan. They knew that wasn't the plan. They believed Jesus was Messiah. From their perspective, that meant that he would rule and reign forever. So much, they knew it so much so that when he started talking about going to the cross, they were like, no, you can't. But they lost perspective in the heat of the trauma of the storm. You know what I mean? And I think so many times we lose our peace and we lose our understanding and we lose our scope when emotions start to get generated. Now, I don't mean you're supposed to live emotionless, man. We love people. It hurts. It hurts. Things happen, man. Stress, life, loss. But in the middle of those things, there's only one peace that you can have. And it's the same one they found. It's the peace of knowing who God really is. And no matter how the circumstance or no matter how the situation turns out, the faith that we receive tells us that no matter what happens, win, lose, live, die, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. We have something in us that tells us that there's more than what we see and know. It may not feel like, it may not happen like we want it to. But at some point we have to realize that I do have faith. God is real. Now, if you haven't received that revelation that God is actually real, see, people talk about getting saved and they talk about saying a sinner's prayer and admitting your sinner and all these religious ideas of doing things. But the difference, when they cried out, save us, the difference is that who he was became real. See, when you come to that place, that crossroads, and all of a sudden it hits you that God is real, that's what salvation, that's what transformation, that's what resurrection is. It's that God is real. That he's real. And when he becomes real to us, nothing can take that away. Even if we lose our minds for a while, it's okay. Even if we hurt for a while, it's okay, because our peace and our foundation and our rock is in the fact that God is real. I think it's always peculiar how nobody gets resurrected or transformed or saved at the highlight of their lives. Have you noticed that? How many of you guys were like walking on the clouds at the highlight of your life, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I think it'd be good to just follow Jesus now? I've never met anybody. Just about everybody I know met Jesus in a storm. Just about everybody I know woke Jesus up in a storm and said, hey, I'm going to die. I need you. I'm going to die. I need you. And I think at those places, in those storms, in those places where our emotions and our flesh and our rational mindset starts to say, you know what? I don't have control. This is going down and it's going bad, and I need somebody outside of myself that can do something. And I think it's at that point that we receive that faith. Faith is received. You can't, like going into that, you can say, I got plenty of faith. Yeah, right. Wait till that parachute don't open. Where's your faith now? No, I have faith. No, you have imagination. When a parachute don't open, you're looking for somebody outside of yourself. Help. Help, I'm going down. I'm not going to make it. See, I don't want you to put pressure on yourself to just say, man, I need to generate more faith. That wasn't what Jesus was telling the guys in the boat. He was like, you're all freaking out, but remember who I am. Peace, be still. There's something extremely calming in the middle of chaos when you think, wait, God loves me, and He's got this. No matter how it works out. I'm not going to tell you, man, I think that's the most screwed up thing we ever do is tell people, well, you know, if you really had enough faith, it would have worked out different. Faith doesn't make things work out. Faith makes you handle the things that don't work out. Positive thinking doesn't make things work out, and if you just think harder, they'll work out for you. The faith that's received lets you rise above the circumstance, whether it's good or bad, whether things are going great or not. It's faith that helps us to walk through that. And I think at these times, man, my faith or my perception of faith gets rattled. I've had a lot of loss over the last few years. I've been through a lot of things, and you guys are going through a lot of things, man, and it's tough. And a lot of things, I'm not going to stand here and say, I've sat on the edge of my bed before going, am I just making this all up in my head? And if you haven't, I'm not sure God's real with you. I'm sure you kind of have the kind of relationship where you can actually be honest. Because I've sat there and asked myself, have I lost my mind? Have I bought into some kind of cult? Have I been brainwashed? Is any of this real? Is God real? Is He there? Does He care? Do you ask those questions? Have you ever asked those questions? That's when it gets real. See, but I love those times. Not that I want to stay there, but it's at those times God says, yes. Yes, I am, and here I am. It's about time you stopped long enough to find me. I've been here in the boat sleeping the whole time, waiting on you to need me. How many times, man, do we just fight through storms while God's sleeping in the boat? Get tough. Have more faith. That's not helping. Why don't you go and find the faith you do have? Don't generate more. just remember who's in the boat asleep. I really believe that God does love us. I really believe he cares. Here's something that's crazy. I also don't believe that he loves me more than you. I don't think he loves good people and hates bad people. I don't think the things we do even changes God's view. Sometimes I think people who are self-destructive and self-abusive and people who are going through things and hate God and run from God, I think sometimes maybe he loves them more because they need more. You know? Like if we could measure it, I think sometimes when your kid's doing real bad, they need more love. Like, you know, that kind of love. They need more love. And we know we don't love our kids any more or less. We like them more or less. But I think sometimes if you're far from God and don't believe him, don't think that any of this is even real, I think you're probably way closer than somebody who looks like they've got it all together. I think you're way closer to God's kingdom because I think it's in the storm that something inside of us, that faith, that spirit inside of us wakes up. I told Howard this not too long ago, but I was studying the Holy Spirit, and I was kind of trying to figure out what the Spirit of God really was. I was going to come up with the answer. You know, I thought he would give me that revelation. And I started reading my Bible, and I can't really figure out what exactly faith is either. And I started to realize that the Spirit of God is faith. And if you take your Bible and you start reading about faith and you just substitute Spirit of God in there, at every turn, it's the same thing. So you can't generate the Spirit of God, right? But the Spirit of God is faith, and where the Spirit of God is, the faith is. And where the Spirit of God is, there's freedom. Where the Spirit of God is, there's peace and joy and goodness, happiness, self-control. It's where the Spirit of God is. And so we use all these different words, and we got all these formulas, like, you know, God's grace plus my faith equals eternal life. God's grace, God's faith, God's life. And we get to enjoy the ride. You realize everything is from him, for him, through him, and by him, back to him, right? Everything. We just get to enjoy the good parts. He does all the work. There is no difference between faith and where God is as God's Spirit is. That's why people without faith are people without the Spirit of God. And all that simply is that we haven't been in a bad enough storm to wake Jesus up. Does that make sense? I really think that we've got to get out of a religious mindset saying, man, I need to generate more faith. I just need to be, maybe if I read my Bible, pray more, go to church more, tithe more, whatever, I'm going to have more faith. Well, I'm sorry, man. But you just got to stop what you're doing and receive what God's trying to do to you. That's the resurrection life. That's what real salvation is, right? You know that. Saying a prayer don't get you anywhere. Sorry, I'm sorry, but if you can say a sinner prayer 1,000 times, it ain't going to get you anywhere. It's coming to that point saying, hey, Jesus, I'm going down and I think I need somebody to save my life. I need somebody to save my life. And that's when God becomes real. You're never the same. Never the same again. That's my scope anyway. I want you guys to stand with me. I want to pray for you.